Hello ladies and gentlemen, Conodger here, and welcome to part number 1 of the 2020 Dodge Viper Build-Off Automation to BeamNG contest. I have gone through the 80 plus entries to the 2020 Viper contest and picked 10 finalists to go head-to-head and choose my favorite 2020 Dodge Viper concept car. All 10 of these cars are going to be judged based on the guidelines I set in the last video, where I judged my own 2020 Dodge Viper concept, and we'll find which one of these I think is the best. If you don't see your car in these 10, don't worry, it might still get featured. I've also given out a number of interesting awards to cars that happened to have interesting qualities that I thought deserved an award. So intermixed with the individual car reviews, I will be putting in some of those awards over the next series of videos. This is not something that I am going to rush through. I already have about 6 hours invested into importing the cars and going through them and selecting the finalists. So there's going to be a few videos in this series before we decide on a winner. So what I think I'm going to do is take 2 cars per episode and give them scores, and then in between those and around those will be the interspersed awards. So it's going to be a, let's see, easy math here, carry the 6, and that's 5 episodes that we're going to have of doing these reviews, and then at the end we'll have the winner chosen. So, quickly, about the 10 cars here. There's a couple themes. There was actually a lot of themes within the whole competition, or within all of the entries, where there was cars that were pure concept, there were cars that were next-gen concept, and then there is your outlying either just wild ideas or wildly concept ideas. What I've decided to do is, because I had 10 cars of similar theme, is I've decided to settle on the 10 2020 Dodge Viper concept cars, meaning these are cars that are being proposed to take over for the Dodge Viper in 2020. I also have a lot of cars that were very good, but they were more non-production ready based concept cars. And I do have another group of those that we'll probably look at a later date in some form or another. But these are the 10 that I've decided to choose for this competition. There is some trends here. The color blue was very popular, or the color red. So apparently if you're going to buy a Dodge Viper, you can have any color you want as long as it's a shade of blue or a shade of red. Which, honestly, those are 2 very iconic Viper colors, and I get it. Styling-wise, these are cars, in some way or another, they are part of the Viper lineage. So that was an important thing for me to pick the 10. These are cars that when you see them, they do scream Viper at you. And that was an important part of getting this far along. How will they drive? I don't have any idea. There's some themes amongst the group. There's the V10 groups, there's the different engines, there is front engine, there is rear engine. There are different themes amongst this whole group, and they could all drive completely different. I have driven none of these vehicles. I made my choices purely based on their representation in automation. Without further delay, let's go ahead and get into doing reviews and get these 10 cars off of my map so I can get more than 7 frames per second. The first car of review is Sinsins. So let's start going through our grading system, and the number 1 thing on the list is the 10-year-old wow factor. Is this a car that when a 10-year-old sees it going by down the street, is it going to wow them? Here it is from the office, and then we'll pop out here and look on the street, give it a good look around, and this car definitely takes the modern approach to styling, which is the sharp, thin lights and the overall, it's actually kind of missing the big obnoxious grills of the modern designs, but it does take in a lot of the the sharp approaches of especially European and Japanese design in order to draw in the eye. I don't know overall that it does have a huge amount of 10-year-old wow factor. It just doesn't quite grab the eye as much as I think a Viper could. The lines of the car are actually almost in some ways subtle. The amount of vents and scoops and canards and things like that does bring it up some, and that does bring in some of the wow factor. The side pipe sticking out there, and these huge ducts in the back, they do increase it some, but the overall design, I think, kind of misses out in some of the wow factor. The vents and the sharp angles and such do bring it up, but the overall package doesn't quite work together for the wow factor. So I'm going to give it a 5 on the wow factor. Next up, we're going to be looking at legacy. Does this car share a lineage to the previous Vipers? In shape, yes. The shape is very iconic Viper. Long hood, short back, but with that rear spoiler situation. Not really spoiler, but just the rear cutout definitely does have some of the Viper looks. There's some nice Viper lineage right here with the third brake light in the old Viper logo shape. That is a nice touch. The front is missing a little bit of Viper lineage. It doesn't have any of the previous Viper kind of tendencies that I am familiar with anyway. So lower marks there. It does have the side vents that are very common, and it is a side-piped V10, which has some good legacy to it, for sure. Has kind of the Viper sound as well. Overall, though, I see the Viper in it. It's got a very fanged look, and it looks like a car that could be described as a Viper, but it doesn't have a lot of legacy to the older Vipers. So I'm actually only going to give this one a 3 on the legacy standpoint. The next part of that is timelessness. These two are very close hand in hand, and timelessness has more to do with how do I think the design is going to age over time, because some of the Viper designs have aged very well. The GTS, the original GTS, has aged very well, and I think the current generation is going to age very well versus the first RT10s and the second SRT10 generation, the second GTS generation, have not aged as well. This one, because of its very modern looks, and this car is definitely designed more in the concept car way. It's one that's supposed to wow on the concept car floor, the car shows of the nation. It definitely has some good factors there, but I don't know how this design is going to hold up over time. It's using a lot of vents and fixtures and extravagance in that to try and draw in the attention, and that stuff doesn't always age quite as well. So I think I'm only going to go for a 2 on timelessness for this design. Next up is going to be the drivetrain stuff. Drivetrain plausibility and creativity. This car, like I said, designed quite so in the concept car kind of vibe. It is very fast, it has a lot of quality points used, and there's a lot of high-tech stuff on here. This is a direct injected large displacement V10, so it's kind of like the previous generation V10s that's been modernized. It's got direct injection, it has good efficiency, and it has a modern dual clutch transmission. This is a car that is, I think, or the drivetrain of it is very plausible. If somehow Dodge is able to keep the old V10 alive, they're going to have to modernize it like this. This is how it will pass efficiency and emissions requirements in the future. This would be like a last holdout of the V10 era. The dual clutch brings it up to modern terms, and it matches the modern looks as well, I think. You know, this car obviously is meant to try to attack. This is meant to try and go after the Ferraris, the Porsches, the Audis, and even the Corvettes. and try to compete with them head-to-head rather than being its own unique beast. And in that, I think the plausibility of this drivetrain is very high. I think this is a very high likelihood of something we could see in the future. I'm going to give it a 9 in plausibility. However, in that, it's not super creative. It is doing what the other manufacturers have done, and in that it will then compete with those cars. So that means that this car has to stand up to those on its own grounds. Like, it has to actually outperform them instead of just being, oh, it's the Viper, you know, it's its own unique car now. It doesn't have to stick with what everybody else is doing. So in creativity, it's gonna lose some points here because, like I said, it's doing kind of what everybody else has been doing, and it's doing it in a way that isn't very un-Viper-like. So creativity, I'm going to only give it a 3. Alright, this next one, the Darwin check, is one that I'm very interested in. I don't know how this car is going to be. It is extremely powerful and rear-wheel drive, but it is dual clutch, and it does have very massive tires on it. So we are going to put this thing into regular manual mode. Turn it around on the highway here. Let's just get a little taste of it here. Alright. It will let you light them up just right out of the bat. We gotta do our normal check here, which, let's say we're in manual mode. We're cruising at, 65 or so down the highway. And then we want to be real dumb. Wow, that was actually way more planted than I expected. That surprised me immensely. Now, it still gets out of hand real quick, because this thing is very fast. It is very fast. And it does have enough power to do stupid things. But I am very amazed at how planted this thing just was when I made the crazy downshift. Let's try it again, maybe a little higher speed, and now I'm going to try to go down to first, because I think it might be long gears. Alright, it did, see, going down to first. I think it was the long gears that did it, so let's... The DCT cars are going to have problems with this one. Yep, it will light them up in second gear. Not quite as easily as I think mine did, but it did do it. So I'm going to give this one a close. It's close in the Darwin check. I'm going to give it an 8. Alright, we're over on the handling track now. Let's see what this thing is like. I'm going to give it tries ESC on and ESC off. I gotta tell you, it is a handful even with it on. Let's actually throw this thing down into sport mode. It's got a dual clutch. Let's try to use that to make it a more enjoyable experience, because this thing is a lot to hang on to around the small track. Ooh, buddy. I can't even identify at this point, really, where the handling is struggling with. I really think it's just so diabolically fast that it's just flat out hard to keep up with. I do think it's fighting with the ESC quite a bit, as it's trying to figure out what to do with this much power. Really chasing the steering back and forth quite a bit. Ooh, and then understeer there. Alright. Don't think the short course is where this car wants to be. This is the car that wants to be... See? Got a lot of air there. This is the car that wants to be out on the Texas Mile, I do believe, doing top speed competitions. Let's really risk our lives. I'm going to turn the ESC off now. A little easier on the throttle. Let's see if it handles a little bit better without the computer. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say this thing's pretty wild. It's very high on the hooning fun. Like it knows how to be wild, but it loses marks on the being like actually, drivable fun. Definitely one of the hardest to drive cars I've ever tried around this track. But this is only car number 1, and these are Vipers. So who knows? Who knows how that could go? But as of now, I'm actually going to say that this is a 2. This is a 2 and a 5 for the handling cars fun. It's just, as of now, it's not a lot of fun. We're going to take it over to the big track, though, and see if it's a little bit more tame with the big track. Oh, buddy. It's a lot. It is a lot. It is very Viper, but it's almost like Hennessy Viper. It's Venom Viper. Oh, buddy. I almost think maybe the manual transmission would have been easier to handle, because this thing, having the dual clutch and having this sport mode dual clutch, it's always in power band, and power band is a whole lot. Long in the brakes, it just doesn't seem to have enough brakes to get slowed down. They're not overheating, but it seems like maybe it's just a little underbraked, or perhaps the ABS is having to overreact, and that's keeping it from being able to get the most out of the brakes. Also, really chasing it around, even with ESC on. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when I turn it off. Oh, jeez, did you see that? It almost Darwin checked me just on the straightaway there. Interesting this is, that it was more manageable as a street car than it seems to be as a track car. Oh man, this is very fast. That's very fast. Flat. Oh no, ran out of grip. I don't think so. I don't think it's a lot better on the big track than it was on the small track, to be honest with you. I think this is actually best left on the street. This car is meant to be heard, seen, and maybe not tracked. Trackability, oh man. I hate to do it, but I think I'm gonna give it a 1 on trackability. It's just too much, especially to have the no arrow. It seems, no arrow, and maybe not quite enough brakes, but so very much power. It's just a lot to deal with. Oof. Wow. Yeah. I have a feeling it's going to do the next one just fine, though. Alright, with ESC off, and we'll put it in manual first gear, can this car make Cars and Coffee get shut down? It even hit the curb exactly like they do in all the YouTube videos. That's a 5 out of 5. Alright, as we hang our heads in shame and bring our 2020 Dodge Viper back home to the dad. He's gonna be so mad because we shoved it into the curb. That will conclude the review of SimCity's car. Very good concept. It definitely has that concept car feel to it. I think it would do very well on the showroom floor, and it's going to make magazine buzz, but drivability and usability might be a problem. Just a little bit. For Spooky Squid, the Sharpest Butt Award. Yeah, I have a feeling the DOT is going to have some issues with the fact that there's a lot of split-in-half cars rolling around that happen to rear-end Vipers. Youch. There Was an Attempt award goes to Carmack, who really tried to pull off that Dodge crosshair grille that a lot of people tried to pull off, and the grills and automation just were not working for it. Carmack had a very unique solution to the problem, but it had a very unique problem. I don't know if that's an export error, if it was showing up in the grill for them or not, but regardless, the way it is now gave me a good giggle. Next up, we have Zippy's 2020 Dodge Viper. This one's giving me a lot of the feelings of the ACR or GTSR Vipers. Definitely your top-of-the-line model here with its full track arrow and very, very strong presence. This car looks like it is ready to kill. It has all of the canards, all of the lips, all the vents. However, it does it in a very cohesive way. I think the styling on this car is really nice. Very good use of fixtures. These really, really cool bumps off of the hood bumps. They're basically like two little, what were those called? Like Evo 10s had them, and the MR Evos, and some cars have them off the back window. They're called something, but you know what I'm talking about. They look really cool. The two little lips on the back are very cool. The whole car just oozes cool. And I am actually going to, I didn't think I would, I'm worried that I'm going to give this score so soon. This is getting a 10. This is a 10 out of 10 on the 10-year-old wow factor. If a 10-year-old saw this thing going down the street in a parking lot or through glass at a dealership, they're gonna wow. Now, a car can have wow without having a lot of Viper legacy. So now we need to look at this car on the terms of the Viper lineage. So here I'm looking for details that make this car a Viper. And honestly, this is not extravagantly different than the previous generation Viper. This is something that I think if you put next to a 2016 Viper, you would think, okay, that's probably the next generation or even a continued generation of that car. Very much so speaks to that generation. The looks are updated. It does have the more angled and sharp look that manufacturers seem to be going for. A lot of grille space. It does have the crosshair grille, something I was really looking for. That is very much so Viper. That's something that makes it very identifiable. And the back as well is very identifiable with the panel in the back sunken in with the taillights in it. The car really does scream Viper. It's got the humps on the roof. It's got the Nagaduck, which kind of looks like the GTS Viper that I really loved. And yeah, I hate to say it. I hate to say it. This one's going to have 2 perfect scores right out of the gate. It's going to really screw up my whole scoring system. But yeah, it's getting a 5 out of 5 on the Viper legacy. The next part of that, though, and the part that might actually knock this one out of perfect, is timelessness. The problem that I have with this is that it's very extra, and I'm going to keep using that term and look like a fool, but it's very extravagant. You know, it's got all of the features that it could possibly have on it. It's got every wing, it's got every spoiler, it's got every lip, and really, that kind of hurts the timelessness of the design, especially since the design is extremely contrived, we'll say, from the current or previous generation Viper. It's a evolution of that design. It's not a revolution. That does help with the legacy part of it, and that does make it a timeless design. But I don't know that this design is any more timeless than the previous generation. And I think if I saw this without all of the craziness on it, if I saw it in its normal trim, I don't know if I would feel as strongly about its design. So I am actually going to knock it there and go down to a 3 on timelessness. It's just not got the elegant, future-proof design. And I'm always going to compare these versus the 96 GTS, which I think is a timeless design. Zippy's Viper features a V10, about 8 liters, but it's dual overhead cam and has direct fuel injection. This is a previous generation Viper engine brought to modern terms. Still going to be something that's rather expensive to do. It's not going to be easy, but it's very feasible, and probably would give the V10 a little bit more time. It's going to extend the lifespan of the engine a little bit. It's going to give it not a lot of future proofing though. So plausibility is high, and not unreasonable by any means, but I don't know that the plausibility of it being a car or an engine drivetrain combination that can last forever. It is a regular 7-speed manual, so it has gone to a 7-speed manual, and that does give it more miles per gallon, but I don't think it's ultimately plausible. I don't know that this is a combination that will actually be able to be feasibly produced in 2020. The EPA is probably going to have something to say about it. So I'm going to go for a 9 on the plausibility on this one, because it is ultimately something that can be done. Creativity, though, definitely marks down on creativity. It's a solution we'd all like to see. It's something to continue the Viper legacy for sure, but creativity, not very strong. It's an evolution, not a revolution, and creativity definitely requires some revolution. I think I'm going to go for a 4 on creativity on this one. It's not the exact same. It's not overhead valve, it's not the Viper V10, but it's not anything revolutionary either. Darwin check. Now, this one might be interesting because this car is manual and does have a lot of power, but it is very tracked out. It has a lot of aero and it does have very wide tires, so I don't know how this one's going to do with the Darwin check. We will see. No, I didn't hang on to it. It was close, though. It was close. I am doing this on first pull, by the way. I'm not teasing you. This is my first attempts at doing the ridiculous thing of cruising down the highway in a low gear and then slamming it down into second to see what happens, or whichever gear happens to line up to it. But no, yeah, this one seemed pretty savable. Let me try one more time here. Yeah, that time I nearly had it saved, so I don't think it's ultimately murderous. You'd have to do something really ridiculous. I'm actually going to give this a little bit more of a study here. Let's just say we're cruising in second gear. So yeah, it doesn't make a ton of power down low, it makes it all up high. Which actually can be even scarier because it builds power when you're not ready for it. This one's proving to be a little bit more difficult than I expected on this one. I thought this one would be more cut and dry. I lost my wing! Well, there you go. If you can lose your wing just on accelerating on the highway, that's pretty Darwinistic, huh? Alright, so not a full 10. Not a full 10. We'll give it a 9. Now this I'm looking forward to. On the test track, on the small handling track, and I think this thing's going to be a lot of fun around here. I got the ITSC on for now. I think what's really nice about it is that it does build power instead of having power everywhere. And it does have some aero, although that's not going to give us a huge benefit on the small track. Which is why I like the small track. It kind of levels out the playing field a bit there, whether you wanted to go stock trim or crazy ACR style trim. So far it's been more controllable. ESC is definitely getting a workout. Brakes seem pretty good, and the nose turns in very well, which can be a problem for these larger, ooh, understeer there, larger engine cars. Did catch some air, but not a ton. Has a bit of the same issues that my car had, which is on the brakes, it wants to shake the nose real hard. And trust me, I know, I realize that this whole car exporter thing, it's very young, and cars are still not handling one for one exactly like you might expect. So this is all done in fun. Keep that in mind. Definitely getting a lot more understeer than I expected out of it, though. I didn't expect quite this much of the understeer. It wants to step the tail out. Let me get the ESC off. And then let's see if it balances out a little bit more, or if I can even handle it at all. This car might have a little bit more power than I was expecting. I think, yeah, it definitely wants to slide the nose pretty hard under these loads. Feels like it's going to do the big track real well. Small track, it's a bit too much for. It's not nearly as absolutely uncontrollable, but it's also not something I would be super comfortable with. If this was a track that they were like, hey, bring your car out for the weekend and have some fun, I'd probably be like, oh no. A lot of air that time. Brakes are very good though. The brakes are spectacular. Shit, you really gotta rein this thing in. There's gonna be the nature of the faster cars. So yeah, I'm gonna say handling course fun. I'm gonna say I'm starting to get the hang of it now. So it's definitely got some fun in it. It's doable, but it's not ideal. So I'm gonna say, because I don't think any Viper is gonna be perfect at this. I'm gonna give it a 3, which might be a little generous. But we'll have to take it to the big track and see if these handling characteristics get worse or better. But no, I'm definitely starting to get the hang of it. So I'm solid with a 3 now. Big track has been very good to me so far. It's wild, it's crazy, but it is a lot of fun. The brakes are phenomenal, which is helping it a ton. You know, when you do things really dumb, you can actually get the thing slowed down. The ESC is having to work in overtime to try and keep me pointed the right way. The arrow, I do think it does help on the big sweepers, but of course there's a lot of slow turns on this track too that, you know, the chassis has to be set up good for. And it's really not too bad. A lot of speed. We're about to, I think, see our, well, depending on the arrow, we might be able to see our top speed so far, but it all depends on how much downforce and how much drag this thing has. I think I will be able to maybe hold it flat through here. Gonna hold it in 5th gear. Nope, pushed the nose real bad. I had to lift. Oh, it actually, honestly, that was terminal understeer through there. That was not what I expected at all. I wonder if this thing has too much rear downforce, actually. Trying to get the power down, but suffering then with front arrow helping the car through the fast turns like that one. Safe, that makes it safe, unless you get a loose nut behind the wheel like me that still tries to take a turn flat. But it does make it more trackable, because I think you're much easier going to handle understeer through a turn like that than you are oversteer. Okay, so trackability. My gut says 3, but then the brakes are so good, and then the ESC can control the car pretty well. And honestly, it's not too bad with the ESC off either. Once you're up to speed, the power is pretty manageable. Some handling drawbacks, but they tend to err to the side of safety rather than craziness. So I am going to give it a 4. last but certainly not least is the Cars and Coffee test. Can you get Cars and Coffee shut down with this thing? My gut feeling is absolutely. I really didn't even need to hold the brake, but I just know this thing is incredibly capable at this. Let's see if we can get it straightened out. Give it just a second. Oh, yeah! Very much so capable and getting Cars and Coffee shut down. Alright, that is Zippy's example. 2020 Dodge Viper. Very, very good design. Super happy with what you're able to do with the fixtures. I do think it shows a lot of Viper legacy, and the scores do reflect that. Very, very strong runner right here. And that will do it for day 1 of car reviews. 2 down, 8 to go. I do realize and I do know that at the end of the day, ties are going to be very, very possible in this scoring. And don't you worry, at the end of this series, if we do have ties, I have plenty of ideas to break those ties. And they will be very fun. And, again, if your car isn't going to get featured, if it's not one of the 10, don't you worry. As you've seen in this episode, there's some awards going out, and there's other things we will do with these cars in the future. But for today, that will do it. Thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time for more reviews. Ouch.